Alright, you guys, how's it going? So today we're going to be doing we're going to be rebuilding the entire front suspension on this Ford Ranger, my truck. Did the passenger side yesterday. Took a while, not going to lie, but you know, now that I had to go down to O'Reilly's a couple of times to go and get the right tools and everything, but you can see all the new parts in there, all the new greasable stuff. So, if you have this truck, I believe it's 1998 and onward. If you have the two-wheel drive coil spring setup, you can actually go into Rock Auto, and they have what's called a suspension kit, and it includes both the passenger and driver side, upper and lower control arms, and inner and outer tie rods for like $280. It's a really good deal. So, yeah, so we will go ahead and get started on this guy, and yeah. So this is going to cover just about everything on how to do this. I'm going to try and be as in depth as possible. You know, I'm probably going to get a little bit frustrated here and there, but you know, we will get going here and there. And also, I noticed this morning and a little bit yesterday too that my passenger side sits a little bit higher now. You can see the angle that it's at, and I think that's because I was reading the Haynes manual, and I mean, yeah, my caster's off a little bit. I need to go get an alignment, but when I was reading my Haynes manual on how to put this thing back together, I think that two-wheel drive lift kit video where I took this thing on a Chatsworth tire, they didn't really position the coil spacer, or the coil spacer, the lift spacer correctly, and so I think now it's actually riding at the proper ride height that it's supposed to. So I'm hoping I can get the other side to balance out and do that correctly, which I'll show you where to position the coil spring and how to compress it back in and whatnot. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started on this. Alright, so obviously the first thing you're going to want to do is, if you don't have an impact, go ahead and break your lug nuts now. I'm using my impact on this one today, so I don't have to worry about that, but go ahead and jack the truck up, like high. You're going to have to get this thing way up in the air, because you're going to have to drop that lower control arm really freaking low to get that coil spring out and back in. So, yesterday I just went ahead and put my jack stand underneath the transmission mount. So, I'm going to go ahead and put the jack right up next to it. And I'm basically just going until the jack completely maxes out. There we go. Jack stands all the way up. And we're good. And for the time being, I'm just going to leave that right there just to support it in case anything goes wrong. But I will need this jack a little bit later on. And as you can see, we are completely off the ground now. Alright, and so you've got, at least for mine at least, these are 3/4 or 19 millimeter, one of the two. I'm just going to go ahead and break these off, and I'm going to take this is my lug nut lock washer, or locking nut key. Just to give you an idea of what we're replacing today, we're going to be replacing the upper control arm, the outer tie rod, the inner tie rod, and the lower control arm. So all this is coming out, and it's basically going to be completely bare. The only thing that's going to be here while we're working is the sway bar. So yeah. So we've got, just like yesterday, I mean, I think I started working at 7:30 in the morning, and I had finally finished the passenger side at what is it, 3 o'clock. So, you know, that's why I wanted to wait till today, is A, so I had more sunlight, and B, I was exhausted. But I think today's gonna be quicker because I actually have the right tools and I know what to do now, blah, yada yada yada. So yeah, so the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and take the brake, the entire brake caliper and mounting bracket off, and then kind of set it over here like I did yesterday on a jack stand, and then we'll go from there. And then also really quick too, before I forget, go ahead and grab some penetrating fluid. I've got CRC's Freeze Off. I love this stuff. And just go ahead and hit all the bolts that you need to take off, because it does make it easier to take them off. So all of these up here. And then I just took the sway bar off. We'll go ahead and hit this lock nut here, because this is a pain sometimes to get off. Outer tie rod nut. The lower ball joint nut. And then lower control arm bolts. And the reason why I'm replacing the entire lower control arm is that way I get fresh bushings in there. You know, it would have been a lot faster and easier just to replace the ball joints, but I want new bushings. So that's why I'm doing that, if you guys are wondering why I'm not just replacing the lower ball joint. So, and plus that's just, like I said, that suspension kit was a really good deal to pass up, so there's too good of a deal to pass up. Alright, now we're going to take the brake caliper off. Alright, and so for the caliper mounting bolts, you have two 15mm bolts. You have one right back here, and then you have one down here. You're going to need an extension for the upper. And under usual circumstances, I'd say go ahead and turn the wheel and whatnot, but I only have one side of the truck jacked up, so I can't really do that. So I'm just going to use my cheater bar. And so, I'm going to go ahead and take care of this upper since I already have an extension on it. And then you take your little cheater. There we go. And then the lower. I'm trying to keep you guys out of the sunlight so you can see what I'm doing here. And make sure that you take the lower one off first, because sometimes if you take the upper off, this whole thing will try to flop on you, so just keep that in mind. Okay, that's number one. And you know, this front suspension has almost a, you know, these are all the original parts except for the shock absorbers. You know, this front, and these are all Ford parts from the factory still, and this truck has 180,000 miles on it now. And I'm amazed that they lasted that long, especially with a modified suspension and all of the severe abuse that this thing goes through when I go to Idaho. The off-road abuse, at least. So that's number two. And then, since we still have a lot of hardware to take off up top, because I usually like to put it up there on top of the A-arm, I'm just going to go ahead and grab a jack stand and just pull it off and set it right there. For the time being. Now we can go ahead and get the spindle off, and so we got a pinch bolt here to take care of, and then we've got the tie rod to take care of, and then the lower ball joint to take care of. So let's get to work on this. Alright, so both sides of this pinch nut, or pinch bolt, is 15mm, so I have an open-ended combination ratcheting wrench here, 15 mil, as well as the same 15 mil socket we used to take off the to take off the caliper mounting bolts. So, like I said, guys, I wish I had a taller tripod. I need to get another one, but another piece of crap on it I had from Walmart broke. So, let's see if I can get this one landed here. There it goes. Okay, well, you guys get the idea, and then we'll come back when that nut's off. All right, so that nut's off, and if you guys are doing this, you know how stuck in there this thing is, because this suspension's under a lot of tension right now. And so I just used that really big screwdriver, that one that would fit in here at least, and then, you know, a 5-pound hammer to pop this thing out. But I'm going to leave that in there for the time being, because I don't, you know, once I take the tie rod off, I don't want this whole thing to flop towards me, because I still have the rotor and bearings and all that stuff in there. So next we're going to go ahead and take care of the tie rod and just get it out of its little hole in the spindle. Alright, so when removing a tie rod, you always want to take care of the pinch nut first before you touch this at all. So what I have here is an adjustable wrench, and we're just going to slide it right over here. And sometimes you may need a torch, like I did with the like I needed with my girlfriend's expedition, but these broke free pretty easily yesterday, and I think part of that's just because of the freeze off. So just get that on there nice and snug, and then get you a hammer and give it a few taps. And that movement right there is just the ball joint in the, that's not breaking free yet. That's just the ball joint moving around. Come on. Now the ball joint's maxed out. There it goes. So, yeah, move pretty easily. And at this point, you know, I'd say go ahead and take a tape measure, but since we're removing all of this, we're really not going to have a reference point afterwards. But I'm making a mental note that, you know, there's not much threading exposed here, so I'm just going to do it as, I'm just going to kind of eyeball it, and then, you know, this is why I'm going to get an alignment today after I do this. But, yeah. So, now we're going to go ahead and take care of this cotter pin down here. Okay. So, here's our cotter pin way back there. I'm just going to try and pull it out a little bit to get it started. And of course, it's on the back side. Yep. And while we're down here, we might as well take care of the lower ball joint one. There we go. Now those are out. Alright, so your outer tie rod nut to spindle nut is 21 millimeter. I'm just going to go ahead and use my impact to zip it off. Just like that. Just going to put this back on just a little bit here, just to keep it there, and we're going to go ahead and break that free. And like I said in the expedition videos, if you're keeping these, I wouldn't suggest doing it this way, but if you're replacing it anyway, go ahead, just to go ahead and hit the stem. Now keep in mind, remember this movement here, how loose that is. So now we are completely free spinning, and yeah, now it's time to address the lower control arm, the lower ball joint bolt. Alright, the lower ball joint bolt or nut is 24 millimeter, and so that way. Now, make sure that you keep this nut on here because when we pop this ball joint free, this whole control arm or this whole spindle is going to want to drop, and we don't want this thing to fall on our feet. So just, you know, I have that thing just sort of hanging there right now. Now before we move any further, we need to take care of the ABS system, and the easiest way I found on this thing is just to completely remove the entire thing and just kind of hang it up over here, because there's no harness that I can easily get to. So I'm gonna grab my 1/4 inch, and what was it? I believe it was like a 7 8mm. So these are all going to be 8mm bolts, and so we're going to take one off right there at the actual ABS system, and then that little bracket right there. So we're going to take those two off, because that way we can take the entire spindle out, which is nice to do, nice to have. Now with a big job like this, I like to just go ahead and leave the bolts in their spot so I don't lose them. I'm just going to thread that back in there. And then I'm also going to thread this back in there once this bracket comes off. Just like that. Just like so. So now we can take our ABS wire and sort of just hang it up out of the way, just like that, so it's out of the way of any moving parts. So now I think I'm going to go ahead and take care of the upper pinch bolt. And it's done just like it was yesterday. There it goes. Okay, so got the pinch bolt out, and you can see it's still just sort of cemented in place, which is exactly what I want right now. I don't want to deal with that yet. So, yeah, now we're going to go ahead and break this lower ball joint nut free. So go ahead and hit right here on the bottom of the spindle. That's out of here. Okay. Now, what I'm going to take care of next is going to be the inner and outer tie rods. Okay, now for the outer tie rod removal, you just sometimes you need to get a pair of pliers to break these free. Luckily, this one is not like that, so you're just going to twist it off. It's just that easy, as long as you know what you're doing. But there we go, and there's the outer. And you can see I can move it by hand now. You can hear that knocking, which is what I was hearing earlier. And just like the upper ball joint for the control arm, you can hear this thing is on its way out. So I mean, it still has a little bit of life left, but I'm making another really long drive up to Idaho again, and I really want to make sure that I'm good to go for suspension and everything. So now we're going to take this pinch nut off. And there you go. And so far, except for the spindle and all that stuff, you can discard pretty much everything that we're taking off here, because all the new suspension parts are going to come with all the appropriate hardware. And so now you've got a pinch clamp here that we need to take off for the boot if you're taking off the inner tie rod. which if you're already going this far, I would highly suggest that you do. Just because it's one of those things where you have to take it all apart to get to anyway. And inner tie rods aren't that expensive, so that's the clamp. You can keep that if you want to. And then next we have a sacrificial clamp on the back that we need to take off. Alright, so here's a look at the clamp that we need to take off. You're going to try and get right in that little nook right there, and so lift it with a flat blade screwdriver. Alright, that screwdriver's too small now. We're going to move to a bigger one. There it goes. And you can, this is a one-time use type of thing. You can get a hose clamp, but I just use the zip ties that they provided in the kit. And so you got to get it off this breather hose here. And there it goes. Just like that. And you can see the inner tie rod right there. So, which this one's actually in better shape than the other one was, but yeah, we're going to take it off anyway. So here I have a inner tie rod removal tool that I rented from O'Reilly's, and you're going to need this one to take off the inner tie rod for the Ford Rangers. It doesn't really say what size it is, but it's just know that it's the biggest one in the kit. And then you'll also need this one here, that bar. So let's get this tie rod off. And this setup is only for rack and pinion. I believe it's called trapezoidal or something like that. The same style. It's basically, if you have an idler arm and a pitman arm, then you don't have rack and pinion. So we're gonna get that guy in there. Now, I'll be the first to admit these things are a little bit cumbersome to use, but you need them to take them off, so just be expected to have a lot of foul-ups while using these. It took me at least 4 or 5 tries just to break the tie rod free yesterday with this tool because it just kept slipping off. So now I've got my breaker bar on the end of it. I'm just going to slide it back a little bit since it came off the thread of the tie rod. Oh wow, first try. Look at that. Never mind, I take back what I said, just because I know what I'm doing this time. Okay. There we have it. There's the inner tie rod. So, like I said, it's not completely gone yet, but I can easily move it by hand. But this side is actually a lot better than the driver's side, or the passenger side was, for some reason. But yeah, and like I said, if you're already going to be in here doing all this, you might as well replace them, even if they're still quote-unquote good. But yeah, now what we're going to take care of is the shock up here, and then after that, we just have the sway bar. Right now the sway bar is the only thing really holding this control arm up. And then we'll take the entire spring out and then the upper control arm. So, yeah, let me go get all my stuff for. Actually, I'll just start off with these bolts down here. All right, so 12mm down there for the lower shock bolts. There we go. Alright, make sure you keep these nuts because the new control arm doesn't come with those, so we need to reuse those. And I know some of you guys have been asking, but these are great Gabriel shocks. I got them on Rock Auto. You know, for off-roading, they're really good, but if you're looking for a comfortable shock, this is not it. I mean, it feels, after putting these in, just driving on the highway and stuff like that, it feels like my suspension's made out of rocks. So I'm replacing these with Monroe OE Spectrums today, and which I had much better luck with those than I replaced them earlier. So now we're going to take care of the upper bolt for the strut. Alright, so I've got a 14mm combination ratcheting wrench again, and we're just going to put that right up here. Probably not be able to see that, but sorry guys. So, like I said though, if you're doing a lot of off-roading and such, great shock. Because it's good for the hard stuff, but for just the normal driving, like, I mean, bumps feel 10 times worse than they really are with these shocks. So, just in case anybody's wondering. But, I mean, they're still good, you know. But I know that I really wanted to get these shocks changed out. Because I'm looking for a more comfortable ride on the freeway. Since, let's be honest, that's where this thing lives most of the time. There it goes. So, because, yeah, I can still just push on this thing, and it takes a lot of body weight just to get it to go, and the rebound is still really good. So these are still good shocks, but like I said, they're a little bit too firm for me. So now we're going to take care of the sway bar end link here, and then this whole control arm's going to drop. And this is where we need the jack again, so that when we do this, the whole thing doesn't come flying out and I don't get killed by a spring. So let's get all of our old crap out of the way. Just like that. And now, we have a 14 mil up top. Just like that, set to loosen. And then I need a deep socket for the lower. Is a 15 mil. And so just to make this faster, I'm just going to go ahead and run it off again with my impact. So now the entire force of that coil spring is being held by the jack right now, and this is when we need to be a little bit careful here. So just keep in mind that that's a lot of pressure being held in there. It's basically a bomb waiting to go off. So just back up a little bit, and you know, I'm not going to let this thing go on its own, but I'm just going to very slowly let this thing down with the jack and then help the spring out. So right now it's dropping slowly. You can hear the tension in it letting go. Oh, that's right, damn it. I forgot about that. Okay, time to go back up. I think that's why Ford puts these right here, to make it easier, because the control line just got bottomed out on the jack, so I gotta go get a jack stand really quick. Okay. This is why I said we need to. This is why I said that we need to really jack the truck up high. So we can get this coils. Okay. Now we should be able to get it out of here. Just like that. So immediately upon inspection here, I can see that Chatsworth Tire didn't really put these in here correctly. And what Haynes says to do here is, man, this thing's jammed in there. But anyway, you'll see a couple of dots down here. Let me see if I can break this thing free here. There it goes. So these two dots are basically your lineup marks for your coil spring. And so the way Haynes wants you to do it to get proper ride height is to cover the first dot but leave the first one exposed, just like that. And like I think that's why it's riding a little bit higher on the passenger side now. So that's how it's going to go when we put this back in here. So but as you can see, it's pretty much getting down to the last two things, the control arms. And you know, here's the monster frickin' coil spring. So, you know, this is a huge frickin' spring for such a small truck, and you know the spring rate's really frickin' heavy on this thing. So, but one thing I did like about Chatsworth Tires, they use electrical tape to keep the shock mount, or the spring mount in there. So, yeah, I'm gonna put this thing back on the charger, the camera at least. You know, that way I don't die. The camera doesn't die in the middle of something. I'm just gonna take a quick little break, and we will come back and finish this up. Alright, we're back, and got some more juice in the camera. So we're gonna go ahead and take care of the upper control arm, the A arm up here, and go ahead and get it out really quick. Alright, so the setup I have going here, that's a little bit trickier to get back here. So as you can see, I got my breaker bar fished up through the other side of the frame with a universal joint and a 21 deep impact socket back there, 21 millimeter, and then there's a 21 millimeter shorty here with my 1/2 inch extension and my cheater bar to go ahead and break it. It's going to be a little bit easier on this side, but this side's a little bit trickier because you have the fender liner to deal with and the brake lines. So that's the way I'm doing it, just to keep that back bolt stationary with that breaker bar like that, and then using the shorty to take it off this way. So again, sorry, I wish I had a taller tripod, but I'm sure I'm going to get shit for it in the comments somewhere. Now this one's moving around a little bit. And you are going to need 1/2 inch tools for these because they're just such big sockets. I mean, I do have a 21. Oh, you bastard. I do have a 21 3/8, but with heavy duty parts like these, like suspension, with heavy duty suspension parts like these, it's just a good idea to use 1/2 inch since they're beefier. Yeah, my breaker bar just came off, so I gotta put that back on. Yep, there it goes. Just like that. Get the nut out of there. this camber plate. So that side's good and done. Now we can take care of the front. I can take this universal off. Just like that. Now the A-arm's out, and find the plate. Here it is. And there's nothing on that side. So now the only thing we have left to take off is the lower control arm here. And I mean, it's brutal, but on the passenger side, you have the exhaust system that's in your way. The second cat, and yes, there are two cats on. Maybe it's the first. You have two catalytic converters on this truck, at least for mine, because the new emission standards when this truck was built. Anyway, so the rear bolt back here was bottoming out against the catalytic converter, and I'm not going to go rip out my exhaust system just to do this. So basically, the way I wish I would have got it on camera. But the way I did it was just take the front one off first and then loosen this one so I could pivot the entire arm, and that's how I got it out. And it took about 15 minutes of wrestle on that arm to get that bolt out. But so as you can see here, I think, yep, you just have the regular head on this side, and that's the only way you can take them off, because on this side you have those little lock nuts on here that actually lock into the frame. And these nuts are welded to them, so you have to take them off from the outsides of the control arm to get them off. Alright, just like the uppers, the lowers are also 21 millimeter. I gotta move my brake caliper out of the way. And these are those little lock washers I was talking about. Yep, just like yesterday, it's stuck in there.